passing wealth is not just financial or tax, implications. It's really so much more than that. It's relational wealth. It's spiritual wealth. It's, family values wealth. It's, philanthropy and giving back to society wealth. Like all of these things are what a family, really healthy, thriving family have going, and so we really want to, help people shift the mindset and the mistake of just focusing on the tax or just focusing on the returns, right? And really focused on the impact and the freedom that you can do for your family and for others.
Welcome back to the show. This represents your host, Aaron Hale, and this is Point of Impact. I, just like many of you, hate paying taxes. I don't know, there are some out there that actually like paying taxes, but I tell you what, I think I've given plenty to this country, including my hard-earned dollars. In fact, I hate thinking of taxes. There's a point where, in the past, where the sheer mention of taxes, tax season, used to elicit a negative emotion. Ugh, feelings. Anyways, that was then, but this is now. And I guess I've come to understand what taxes are and been initiated. For the uninitiated, the tax code is a set of restrictions, penalties for making money. For the initiator, the savvy entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, the tax code is a set of incentives. It's a guidebook for playing the game. It's just the government's rules for playing this game, doing what the government wants you to do. So, if you play the game right, you get to pay less in taxes. And I think winning the game is paying as little taxes as possible. And there's many different ways in which you can actually pay zero taxes. And that's if you have the right strategies. And one such tax incentive strategy is called the Deferred Sales Trust, DTS. And to learn more about the DTS, I brought on a DTS expert today. That's Brett Swarts. He's the founder and CEO of Capital Gains Tax Solutions, the podcast host of the same name, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. And he operates and manages his deferred sales trusts. And he's going to explain just what they are and how they work and how you can defer, the capital gains taxes on highly appreciated assets. That way you get to keep as much as you possibly can. And you don't have to give the government a tip. Anyways, I'll let Brent explain it to you. And we'll do it right now. So without further ado, my conversation with Brett Swarts right now. Brett, welcome to the Point of Impact. I'm so glad to have you here.
Aaron, it's been an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know who introduced me to your podcast, but I was fascinated because, as you know, like everyone I know, or at least I like to hang out with, we like to preserve what we've earned, and it's always a kind of a battle to figure out how to pay only the taxes that we have to, that we're supposed to. And I thought I'd talk to enough CPAs and enough wealth preservation experts. But this is something new that a kind of a niche that you've found yourself in. with, was it Deferred Sales Trust,
Correct.
DSCs? And I really do want to get into it because it's fascinating. I love this kind of stuff. It's a bit over my head, but I think it's important for everybody to know and have at least have this tool in their kit. But first, how did you went from, was it the Cheesecake Factory to uh, uh, preserving investor wealth? And it's kind
Yeah.
of a jump. It's almost like going from a bomb technician to a fudge company owner. But anyways, tell me, give me a little background.
Yeah, yeah. So I grew up in California and originally helped my parents build houses. So I fell in love with real estate, the sticks and bricks at a young age. And my brother was the first to graduate college, and I was the second. And my mom and dad wanted to make sure we worked with our brains, not just with our arms and our, the hammers, right? So I had a chance to study and practice multifamily brokerage, an internship at a place called Marcus and Millichap. This is about 2006, right before I graduated college, and things were going really well for a while. I played basketball in college, and I had an athletic scholarship and a basketball scholarship, and I was at a private, like small NAI Christian school, university, which was awesome. And so I had a chance to study Bible and theology and study business and a minor in counseling psychology, and things were a lot of momentum. And so got was working at Marcus and Millichap when I graduated, and all of a sudden, market crashed, and so I went from making a little bit of money to nothing overnight. And so I did what I think what every good entrepreneur real estate wannabe does. You get a side hustle. And my side hustle was Cheesecake Factory. So nights and weekends, I'd like to say sell avocado egg rolls and cheesecake. And by day, I'd work at Marcus and Millichap to help my clients, navigate this world of frustration, of debt, coming due, of deals falling apart, of wealth being lost, and really ultimately freedom being lost for a lot of these folks who had bought into and tried to execute in a real estate investment strategy based upon the 1031 exchange and the rich dad poor dad philosophy and such, which works until it doesn't if you don't have a good alternative plan. And so I really believed and wanted to be in real estate and as a broker and help people buy and sell, and but at the same time wasn't making any money myself, and things were tough. And so we moved my brother into a small condo. I worked nights and weekends at Cheesecake Factory, and then by day I negotiate with banks and really just assess what went wrong and the mistakes that people made, and saw the pain firsthand. And I was in Sacramento, California, one of the bigger boom bust cities in the country, and said there's got to be a better way than this 1031 exchange where people work 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they exchange, and the music stops, and then they lose half or all their wealth and have to crawl out of this because they are illiquid, which is number one mistake. Number two, not diversified, which is also another mistake. And number three, have too much debt, right, which is another mistake. And so learning about this, we said, well, what is the mindset that we should approach to fix this or to help this to never happen again? And it's really taking on a tax flow, debt flow, and a cash flow mindset. And at this time, I learned about a strategy. So this is where my mentor comes in and starts to teach me about a thing called a deferred sales trust, which most people would say, I've never heard of that. What's that? And well, it's an alternative to a 1031 exchange. We'll get into all of these things. But fast forward, I was able to study and practice this for many years, along with a couple other side hustles along the way. My wife and I have 5 kids. We moved out of California 2 years ago. I was able to retire from the Cheesecake Factory, a while back, and now our company collectively has sold over $500 million of, mostly deferred sales trust and commercial real estate transactions, and now I just teach people how to do this, and really we teach people how to unlock truly passive income, right? So they can focus on mission, vision, values for their family, and they can make a bigger impact. And it all starts with this large exit that a lot of people are facing. And we love what we do, and we're grateful to be able to help a lot of people.
We keep mentioning Cheesecake Factory, and now all I'm thinking about are those Southwestern egg rolls. But if, still, you're a real estate broker, and you're your mentor taught you about is deferred sales trust. Uh, that's a way to stay. You're talking about mistakes like liquidating your assets, selling, and of course, when you have a sales event, it triggers a tax event, right? And that's what you're talking about when you're saying losing some of that equity. Yeah, I know, a lot of people, a lot of investors, especially in real estate, they know about the 1031 exchange, the like kind exchange. Is this something similar, or and I know it's a huge benefit because you get to defer the tax event, just kick the can down the road. But there are some drawbacks. What are the differences in the 1031 exchange versus the deferred sales trust, the DTS?
Yeah, great question. So the main difference between 1031 exchange and a deferred sales trust, first of all, starts with the type of assets that qualify in order to qualify for one or the other. And the 1031 exchange blockbuster, and we call it blockbuster because you have, typically have 3 days to return the movie. You got to drive in the snow or the rain to pick it up. The movie may or may not be in stock. You have to rewind it, or, the DVD may be scratched. And so it's kind of the old way of doing things, right? And that's kind of like a 1031 exchange. You have 45 days to identify, 180 days to close on that property, but it must only be investment real estate. So if you're selling a business, if you're selling Bitcoin, if you're selling stock, if you're selling a primary home, a helicopter, or anything, right? A prized racehorse, any other digital cryptocurrency, like, you cannot use a 1031 exchange to defer the capital gains taxes, right? You have to either,
Mm-hmm.
move to Puerto Rico, or you have to, do something where you have a big loss on some other side to offset it. So with the deferred sales trust, on the other side, it's like Netflix because it works for any asset of any kind and at any time. There's no timing restrictions. There's no like kind replacement requirement. Also, it's important to know that you don't have to replace the debt. We talked about tax flow, cash flow, and debt flow. Well, this is the method of what we figured out, that it's kind of like the Dave Ramsey debt-free plan when you're selling your highly appreciated assets. In fact, the time it typically is to sell is also a good time to potentially get out of debt. When you know the market's high and you're getting a good price for it, it's not the time to double down and pay for a property and take on even more debt if the deal doesn't make sense, right? And so under the deferred sales trust, we can truly get out of debt. We don't have to replace the debt. And we can also truly diversify, which gives us the ability to unlock time being the single most important factor to investing. And by that, what I mean by diversifying is not just in different asset classes. Like, we can go into stocks, we can go into Bitcoin, we can go into businesses, we can go into real estate, we can go into debt. So we can diversify across that, but we can also diversify across time, meaning when and how we invest, like a dollar cost averaging, right? And so a good example of this is we did a $13 million exit for a client out of San Diego, and it was a business and real estate. It was a car wash sale. And they had about a $4 million basis and about a $13 million exit. So they had a huge capital gains tax bill that was due. Well, this was 2 years ago, before interest rates really jumped up. And we all looked at it and said, it's not a good time to 1031. Let's get you out of debt. Let's get you diversified, and let's sit on the sidelines and through the deferred sales trust. So that's what we did. We deferred all the tax. The money went into the trust, and we started to diversify a lot of it into T-bills, into real estate debt, but also into Bitcoin. It was at 40,000 a coin, all tax deferred. And we know that Bitcoin's over 100,000 a coin today. We were able to buy into hotels that were distressed over the time, into multifamily that was distressed. And we've dollar cost averaged over the last 2.5 years, all tax deferred. And that's the point here, right? Like, how do you use a method that unlocks time for you to make great decisions, how it unlocks more freedom for you to make great decisions. Whereas the 1031 exchange, what would have happened? He would have bought a property for 13 million or greater, take on equal or greater debt. And then, like a lot of people are suffering right now who bought during that, 2021, 2022 timeframe, and right around there, their debt's resetting, Aaron, and they're losing, right? They're having capital calls. They're getting foreclosed on. It's a disaster, right? And they overpaid because the 1031 put them in that same marketplace and also equal or greater debt. So that's the point here. We really want to give people freedom and flexibility with their capital and their decisions. And if we can give them that, we think we can multiply freedom and impact for them.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's back up just a little bit and tell me what is this thing? It's a trust. It's like an entity, correct? Or is this something more like a retirement arrangement, like an IRA, which I guess also is kind of like an entity itself. But it almost seems like it's got, does it have certain restrictions such as you might have with a self-directed IRA? You mentioned purchasing Bitcoin, and I know you in a IRA you can't do collectibles or uh, a certain type of asset. But what is maybe back it all the way up to what is explaining a trust? What's special about the deferred sales trust itself? So because you got to break it down Barney style for this
Yeah.
Neanderthal.
Yeah, no, it's good, Aaron. It's a great question. So it's a trust that we combine with a tax strategy or a tax code called IRC 453, known as an installment sale. And so your listeners and you likely know that you can carry paper, meaning you can become the lender for a buyer on your asset. And to the extent that you're in a deferral state. And so I'll give you an example. We just helped a client who was selling a $16 million business out of Oregon, and it was a dental practice sale, multiple practices, and their basis was zero. And so the state of Oregon has about a 10% capital gains tax rate or income tax rate on the gains. The federal has 20%, and then you have Obamacare that typically can kick in. On active businesses, it typically didn't kick in, but we'll keep it at 30. Well, that's 30% of the gain, right? It's going to be taxed. So it's a massive, massive tax hit. And so instead of taking all 16 million at closing, they sold first the asset to the trust in exchange for a promissory note. Now they did it in tranches, and so they'll get multiple promissory notes over a period of time as they get money from the buyer. It's different earnouts, but that's basically it. You're exchanging the ownership of the asset. You're selling it to the trust in exchange for a promissory note, and the trust itself sells it to the buyer. It's like a back-to-back sale. And so since the trust bought and sold Aaron for the same price, 16 million and 16 million, the trust has no gain. And since the trust is paying you in installments, the seller is only paying tax as they receive payments. And so to answer your question more fully, it's kind of like an IRA. If you think about it, what happens in an IRA? Well, Aaron can put money into an IRA, a certain amount per year, right? That what is capital gains tax deferred and income tax deferred until when? Until a certain age, he has to start taking money out, required minimum distributions. In a deferred sales trust, there's no required minimum distributions, but it does defer income tax and capital gains tax. A little caveat to that: we do say that it's best to take out some payments starting in about year two. And typically, you can delay it for a couple of years. This strategy has been around for about 28 years. Thousands of transactions, has been through about 30 audits. All no change, no findings, billions of assets sold using it. But during those audits, we've picked up clues on how to even be more conservative in our approach. And one of those things is to make sure there are some kind of payments coming out, and that there's tax being paid and reported. At the trust level, though, there's typically no tax at the trust level because the trust bought and sold for the same price, and it can also expense what it owes the note holder, right, on the interest. And so every year in, year out, even though it's earning, it's typically able to on paper have a loss. And so it's a very elegant, efficient tax deferral strategy that combines IRC 453 and what's called a business trust.
So okay, you personally are one of the what would it be, members
Well, the
of the
trustees, yeah. So a trustee, so Capital Gains Tax Solutions. So I have my own company, and so we serve as a third party, unrelated trustee. And we focus exclusively on working with the creators of the structure, which is a tax attorney, CPA, and they're the ones who do the legal work. And so ours is kind of like the day-to-day management of the trust, right? So helping to connect with third-party real estate operators or funds, third-party financial advisors, and we basically kind of build the team and help to execute that team. I played sports growing up, played football and basketball, in high school, and then I played some basketball in college. And so sometimes I'm like the point guard, directing the troops, directing the team. Sometimes I'm a player on the sideline, just cheering on the entrepreneur. So one of the biggest things to understand is this is not just a retirement plan where you're passive. You can be an active entrepreneur. And if you couldn't be an active entrepreneur, this wouldn't be as valuable as it is. But the fact is, you can partner with the trust and do a joint venture partnership, and then you can go build an apartment complex. We had a client; he sold a $3+ million business sale. He deferred all his tax, and then he built 20+ units in Tennessee, all tax deferred. Great outcome, right? And that was awesome. We had another client sell $5 million of Bitcoin, defer about 1.85 million of tax, and used 4 of the 5 for startup capital and like a Khan Academy online educational platform, for kids, and that's what they use the capital for, all tax deferred, right? And so my role is part of it simply is to navigate and help them to execute on the business plan. As you know, Aaron, people can have ideas, but it's the team that executes the business plan that makes all the difference. And so that's my role as a trustee, to help provide a third-party, unrelated ability to keep the tax deferral, and then the day-to-day execution of it, working with professionals.
Okay. How does this work into a family legacy plan? If say there's a family trust, or passing on the wealth to the future generations, is this like a holding company, or is this more of a short-term tax deferral, like the 1031 exchange? But this is would you have this trust within the trust?
Yeah, great question. So your living trust is separate from this, right? And what you own is the promissory note, and that promissory note is the asset of which you would fund your living trust, right? Just like if you had a house or a business or stock, you form a living trust, and then you make sure that you name the assets into the living trust. Therefore, it can pass to your kids outside of probate. So that's called a revocable trust, right? Revocable living trust is typically what it's called. What we're creating is a complex business trust, completely separate, that's unrelated to you, but it owes you all of the money, right? So these are single entity trusts that only do business with you. I'll bring this to life for you. This is a recent deal for a client of ours, Warren and Catherine, and they lived in Sacramento. They did multiple 1031 exchanges. They owned a duplex in Manhattan Beach. They sold it and deferred tax through a 1031 exchange into an apartment complex in Sacramento. Well, I helped them list and sell the property and build this deferred sales trust plan. Their NOI was about 120,000, but they were trading the 3 T's for 2 T's. They were trading the tenants, toilets, and trash for time with their 2 twin daughters. Right, their twin daughters are 10 years old, and they're saying, "Wow, we've made it." And, financially, freedom wise, just kind of back to the rich dad poor dad concept we were talking about before. But now our time and our energy is being pulled away from what's most impactful to us. So how do we create a wealth and legacy and family mission values that aligns our time and our energy, our wealth, with the impact that we want to make with our family? And so it was very clear once they understood that they want to spend more time with their children and they want to be truly passive. And so their mistake was they were staying in the real estate, right? And they were making about 120,000 a year in the NOI. Well, we built a plan where they can defer all of their tax, over $1 million of tax, and then they could then invest the funds through the trust and increase their NOI, if you will, even after fees, to about $190,000, right? But the biggest thing is they can unlock the time to spend with their twin daughters, which was truly awesome. And so we have a concept that says, don't let the profitable replace the priceless, right? Don't let what's actually working replace what is never going to come back. The time you have with your young kids at a young age, to instill the mission, vision, values, as well as to be able to make an impact with them. My wife and I have 5 kids. They have 2 kids, but Warren and Catherine, they were finding their time and their energy was spent, driving to the properties on the weekends. Warren would go and 2, 3, 4 hours, of work plus 2, 3, 4 hours of traffic back and forth, and the whole Saturday was shot, right? And he's going, what am I doing? He's like, I can be with my family right now. I know for me, it's part of why I've been a passive real estate investor for so long, because I did not want to, overextend the time and the energy that I'd had with my family. And I had, working full time in my career and my passion, my company here, but I didn't want to add on additional time and energy that would pull me away. And so again, don't let the profitable replace the priceless, and know that your living trust and the deferred sales trust can be a seamless integration with the way we set it up.
So this is, I was going to say, a capital gains protection strategy, tax shelter, for lack of a better term. But so do these properties, can they still be leveraged? I mean, you need to own the equity, the DST, the note that you hold with the DST, right? So it's only on the percentage of equity you own, correct?
Yeah, good question. So a typical deal we need to have at least $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, and then it needs to be a sale happening, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we just did an automotive $8 million exit for a client out of Massachusetts. He and his wife built up a business, had zero basis, and had about 2.85 million of tax. And so they were selling the business. And then so we set up the trust to receive the capital. Now, once the capital's there, they can partner with the trust, and they can go start a new business or buy an apartment complex or go into passive investments. And all of those can be leveraged, right? So you can use the trust to provide the down payment, the
Mm-hmm.
joint venture partnership. And this is like one of the best kept secrets, right? To understanding this piece here. And that gives you the ability to make excess returns as well, the way we structure it. The typical promissory note is set to 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10%. And it's a 10-year term. And every 10 years you can renew for 10 years. Then you can pass it to your kids, Aaron, and they can step into your shoes and continue the tax deferral. That's on the 1.0 version. 2.0 version, we have one that eliminates the estate tax without any insurance, life insurance, gifting, or charity required. Although you certainly can give to charity, and we encourage giving and making a big impact with your wealth. And so to answer your question more fully, is it really just all depends. We're going to start with the client who's exiting. Is it a large enough qualifying asset? $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain. Okay, A. B, are they wanting to invest the funds to compound the return? Okay. C, are they entrepreneurial or wanting to be passive, or a little bit of both? We can work with both, and sometimes it's 50-50 on how and where they want to invest the funds. But it's a dynamic trust. Like you can be an entrepreneur, or you can be totally retired. And then we're encouraging everyone to make sure they're dialed in on their mission, vision, values for their family and their wealth legacy. Because passing wealth is just not just financial or tax, implications. It's really so much more than that. It's relational wealth. It's spiritual wealth. It's family values wealth. It's philanthropy and giving back to society wealth. Like all of these things are what a family, a really healthy, thriving family have going. And so we really want to, help people shift the mindset and the mistake of just focusing on the tax or just focusing on the returns, right? And really focus on the impact and the freedom that you can do for your family and for others.
I'm pretty sure Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris don't like this strategy. Uh,
You'd be surprised, actually. So what's interesting about this is most people get confused because we take for granted the IRAs, the 401ks, the 1031 exchanges. And you're right. Some of the more extreme would probably want none of those, perhaps. I don't know. You'd have to ask them about the IRAs. I'm not sure. I think the 1031 gets attacked because it tends to be I guess, what would be considered the more entrepreneurial, people who have a lot of wealth. I'm not quite sure. You have to ask them, but really who benefits the most from this is the government. And here's why, right? If I own, for example, a client of mine, she bought Bitcoin for $50,000. It went to $50 million of value, and at 54,000 a coin. And we exited 5 million of that. And then that infused into a brand new business with new paying jobs, new tax revenue, education for kids, all tax deferred, right?
Mm-hmm.
she was incentivized to use our strategy to create more jobs, to create education for children. So if you go on that scenario, I'd imagine, no matter if you're on the right or the left, you'd say that's a great thing to do. Education for kids, it's tax deferred, everybody wins, right? More jobs, which actually creates more tax revenue, which if that's what both sides are going for, then great. The other side of that is, let's imagine she did not sell that, did not create those jobs, right? Because the tax incentives were not there, right? Because the government can't force, another example, multifamily owners to build or developers to build, right? They can't force it, but they can tax incentivize through cost segregation, bonus depreciation, and owning of real estate to depreciate, right? That's how it incentivizes people to go into real estate, because real estate's a lot of work. It's a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of focus, a lot of discipline, a lot of patience and risk. And so the way that you incentivize that action is through tax incentives. And so I would say once they understand that piece, that's why the 1031 exchange is actually an amazing tool for creating housing and creating places that people really want to live, and also the landlord wants to improve the quality of those houses. Then it makes sense. But yeah, on first blush, I think if people just drive by so fast, don't look at the nuances of this, then they miss the entire point that it's actually a win-win for everybody.
After these messages, we'll be right back. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this episode, Extraordinary Delights, EODFudge.com. Extraordinary Delights is a disabled veteran, family-owned small business making handcrafted fudge and other sweet treats for the chocolate-loving patriots just like you. Go to EODFudge.com and check out some of our delicious flavors like triple threat chocolate with or without walnuts, mint dark chocolate, strawberry and creamy white chocolate, or my personal favorite, American Pick-Me-Up, an all-American version of tiramisu. While you're there, go to the apparel store and check out our awesome t-shirts, polos, and the baddest tactical apron on the market. You see me wear on the TikTok show, Aaron Hale's Cook Without Looking. So, right now, go over to EODFudge.com and pick out some fudge, other sweet treats for that patriot in your life with a sweet tooth. That's EODFudge.com. EODFudge.com. And now, back to the show. That's a really good point there, is that Kiyosaki, his McElroy was one of his partners.
Kid McElroy, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He always talk about looking at it. It's just a completely different perspective, right? Taxes and debt are scary for many people. However, for Kiyosaki and people that kind of pulled back the curtain, it's taxes are and debt, and taxes especially, are the tax code is not a punishment. It's not. It's more like an incentive plan. It's rules for partnering with the government, and incentives for providing what the government wants you to provide, like housing.
Yep. Same thing with an IRA, right? They can't force, people to save for retirement, but they also can't afford that if people do not save for retirement, that the government's got to take care of all these people. So instead they tax incentivize through IRAs, put your money every year, this amount, and then start taking money at this amount. And so it's a tax incentivized retirement plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the point of the IRA, right? And it also creates more jobs along the way because the funds are invested into companies that are creating technology, that are creating jobs, that are creating housing. Like it's a win-win-win-win for everybody when we can delay gratification through tax deferral, and everybody wins. I mean, honestly, that's how we were built. America was built through creative and equitable tax relationships with the citizens, right? And the problem becomes when people do take these things away, you disincentivize the entrepreneur and the investor to delay gratification, and then you go somewhere else with the capital, right? Or they just spend it, and it's just not it's not a win-win, or they stop being creative. And so that's where we're at. And we're in the biggest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. So that's important to understand that 84 to $100 trillion is transferring in the next 15 years for the baby boomers. And this is the largest wealth transfer in the history of the world that we know of. And there's about 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every single day. And there's at least 80 million in the U.S. alone. And 50% of all the wealth in America is tied to high-end primary homes, commercial real estate, and businesses. And these are all selling. These are illiquid assets that are selling and have massive, massive gains. But they won't sell if indeed all the taxes of 20 to 50% on the proceeds are getting crushed. And so this is where we come in and we say we want to unlock the capital to multiply freedom and impact, to go back into building of attainable workforce housing, to go back into funding the next tech startup company that can change the world, like a NVIDIA, to whatever it might be for the passion, and also to be able to give. People can give when their cash on cash return could increase. Like Warren and Catherine, they were at $120,000 a year, now they're at $190,000. Well, that's an extra $70,000. They may or may not need that cash flow every year, but they can certainly give to the most vulnerable people in this world. They can certainly make an impact for people right now. And if there's one thing that we've been taught over the last number of years, is that time is short, right? Life is a vapor. Like, who knows how much time that we have on this side of Earth, and what an opportunity to make an impact if we can unlock that capital and help the most vulnerable people right now. And do it in a way that's, you're diversified, you're liquid, and you're truly passive, right? Truly passive income. And so this is kind of the thought we have. I want to kind of leave with everybody, that truly passive income is to your freedom and impact as compounding interest is to your money. And once you understand that piece, that you can just have your money working for you, and you can increase your cash on cash, get out of debt, maybe even increase your cash on cash return, and then be able to give more and focus, more on your mission, vision, values for your family, and implementing that. Man, is it so powerful. And I have kids. The oldest is 14. The youngest is 6, 4 girls and a boy. And I'm telling you, life is moving quickly, right? And so I'm doing everything I can to instill in them the love of God, the love of the Bible, the love of leadership, and the love of the most vulnerable people. And it's like, man, it's happening so fast. So we do jujitsu, we do basketball, we homeschool our kids, we travel with them, we do on missions trips. Like we do these things to instill in them the character and the grit and the passion and the focus and the vision. And it's moving so fast. And I'm feeling like, man, how much time do I have left? Like, how many more nights do I have to put my kids to bed and read them the Bible? How many more nights do I have and days do I have to spend one-on-one with these kids? How many more times can I get to coach? Like, I'm sensing it, but that's what be able to be like, have that margin in your time and your schedule and be intentional about it. And that's what we want to do for folks. Like, so if it's your business that's taking up and it's holding you back from that, if it's your real estate, if the Bitcoin that you could sell could unlock, durable, consistent cash flow, where you didn't have to do anything necessarily for trade your time for dollars, what kind of compounding effect would that have for your freedom and your impact in the world?
Brett, what is the are there any restrictions on what you can use the money for out of the trust?
The answer is no. You can use it for whatever you want. The question is, will it be taxed or not? So if you want to buy a primary home as an example, let's say it's a $5 million exit. I'll do an actual one. We just did a $8 million exit out of Colorado for a client. And he sold a business, and then he sold an apartment complex. So it was actually a total of about 11 million total exit. And he doesn't necessarily want to buy a primary home right now, but he might. And so he can get payments from the trust, just pay tax on the interest as he receives payments. But he might want, let's say, $2 million to go buy another primary home. Well, we can schedule a $2 million payment to come out, and then you pay tax on that, and then you go buy the primary home. So that's really the only thing that's restricted. But you can go into Bitcoin, you can go into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, you can buy insurance, you can, of course, buy investment real estate, buy business, you can go into passive Reg D funds, you can go into active funds of your own. So it's totally flexible for the investor, right? So we serve the purpose-driven entrepreneur and investor. And what do they want? They want freedom and ability to make great decisions with capital. And that's what the Deferred Sales Trust does. It opens up the ability to make blue ocean decisions versus the red ocean 1031 where the sharks are swimming and you've got the small amount of time to make these forced decisions, right? And so nobody likes to do that. But we love real estate. Real estate's our favorite, but we think it's just you gotta have the right time. You gotta have the right focus. You gotta have the right business plan. If you have those things on your side, and you can negotiate when it makes sense for you, and the trust gives you the ability to do that. And that's the whole thing here. This is why it's Netflix versus the Blockbuster way of doing things.
Is there a certain net worth, or at what level would this be a beneficial plan? I mean, my kids' Pokemon card collection, it probably won't generate a whole lot of, it won't generate a big tax event. So I don't think that we'll need to use a DST for this. Uh, so what you're talking millions in bitcoins or personal homes, that kind of thing. Is there a like a I guess a minimum entry level that this would
1
be
million net
worthwhile?
proceeds, $1 million gain is what we found to make sense. Unless you have two at 500 each. So if you had two exits, like a $500,000 Bitcoin exit and a $500,000 real estate exit that combined basically had over $1 million net proceeds and about $1 million gain combined, then we can make that exception. But anything smaller than that doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're selling a primary home, you have what's called the 121 exclusion, which gives you, $500,000 tax free on if you're married, $250,000 if you're single. And so in that scenario, we like to see about a $2 million net proceeds, $2 million gain, right, to make up for that, to make sense. But we did an $8 million Palo Alto primary home exit for a seller. It was a tremendous exit for him. All of his kids had moved out of the house. He had 6 kids. One more than me, which I always scratch my head when people have just one more. I'm like, wow, how'd you do that one? So we have 5, but he had 6 kids. Kids are all gone, and all of his wealth is tied to this primary home that's gone way through the roof. He also had this big debt on it that was, kind of overwhelming. And so we were to sell, get debt free, take his equity, and then he moved to Nevada, which is powerful because once you're in a new tax state, the income tax is on that scenario is 0 versus California, which is higher. And so he's able to receive payments from the trust once he established residency in Nevada at a lower tax rate, which was huge for him, which is part of how we show people how to make the DST an investment and not an expense. The joint venture partnership, the tax efficiency by if you move to another state, deferring the income tax and not taking the full interest payment, resetting depreciation schedules when you partner with the trust. These are all the insider parts that we help people with. So to answer your question, if you have it's got to be big enough, right? And obviously, if you're in New York, New Jersey, Illinois, California, you got Minnesota's a big one. These are larger tax liability states. It's even more valuable. But any state, no matter what, if you have $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, you don't need to spend it like on your primary home. We found it to be a home run.
Does it matter where the trust is established? You're talking about California versus Nevada.
Yeah. So our company, we've got 2 offices in Nevada and Florida, and so that does matter. It does have some difference in that. And so when you're in the lower tax states, it helps at the trust level for sure. Although typically the trust is not paying any tax in any given year because it can expense the interest on the note on paper for its tax return. As far as the seller, though, the nexus will stay with where they're at. So if they sold in California, the principal, if and when they dip into principal, they'll pay cap gains back to California and to the federal government. But a lot of our clients are just living off the interest payments, right? So we did a $7.9 million sale out of Santa Cruz. It was like a beach Airbnb property, and we deferred all the tax, and they just have been living off the interest payments. Right. And so that's what most of our clients do. And at the end of the 10-year term, they can take the full balloon payment. They can also renew it for 10 years, which is like what they're going to do, and just keep doing that. And then the kids can step into their shoes. And so that's really the concept that we work with folks. Like most of them just want to be able to live off of all of the interest or partial interest and let the other, extra, in this scenario, I think it was an extra 40% more proceeds, right, that they have working for them versus, had they sold and not done any planning and just paid the tax. So those are all the things that we work with people, Aaron, to make sense of it.
Hmm. Is there any complications with, say, investing in syndications or securities like that?
Zero. In fact, those are our favorites for our clients. We work with some of the best in the country, DLP Capital, Ashcroft Capital, Praxis
Mhm.
Capital, Brian Berg, Don Winter, Joe Fairless, some of you know, Dan Hanford, Kevin Bupp for Mobile Home Parks, and yeah, so we work with groups all across the country, and then also individual syndications as well, for clients. So it's beautiful. Like it can go right into these assets without having to do any kind of 1031 gymnastics.
Gotcha. And yeah, I love that 1031 gymnastics. Just refreshing my memory on the restrictions on the 1031 just creates anxiety. The time frame to find a like kind of investment. So it sounds like an excellent alternative. Are there any other things that what don't I know? I don't know. Is there anything I haven't asked you, Brett?
So most of what I've been talking about is from the investor standpoint, right? And some of your listeners might be the commercial real estate syndicator, right? They might be the fund manager. They might be the entrepreneur. And I want to also just shift and just say that, or the financial advisor or a CPA. And we found that this is so valuable for the investor, but this is so valuable for the business professional who wants to grow their practice, grow their AUM, right? In fact, we say don't raise capital, unlock it, right? Don't raise capital. Hey, you're going to make 8 to 10%, 14 to 15 IRR over this period of time. Here are the tax advantages once you're inside of the thing, right? Whatever. Instead say, that's, we call that cash flow, or inside of the cash flow box. But we go tax flows when we open the box up and we expand it to each side. And so it becomes a way bigger box, which, what is that? It's before the exit, right? It's before their exit, before they incurring 20, 30, 40, 50% of their proceeds getting crushed with tax. Once you understand that, then you bring value to the equation prior to the exit, and you attract the client to yourself. It's kind of like you're at the bottom of the hotel, or the big office building in Manhattan, and the guy's at the very top. Who's the very top guy? Well, that's the guy who owns that building and every other big building in the city. And there's a people all in the lobby, and they're all business professionals, all in their ties and their suits. And if you ever go to some of these conferences, everyone's in the blue suit with the tie, and maybe not as many ties these days, but it's typically that same kind of outfit. I tend to wear, if you're watching this, if you're watching on YouTube or a video, I have my tax flow shirt on. I walk around with the shirt, tax flow, not just cash flow. And on the back it says, "Friends don't let friends overpay in a 1031 exchange," where everyone else is in the suits. I have a walking billboard to all of the conferences I go into and such. I had all my tie days in the past, but I say that because the business professional needs to stand out. They need to attract and unlock and add value prior to showing up to offer. They're pitching their thing, right? And this is the separator for folks. And so don't raise capital, unlock it. And how do you unlock it? Well, you solve the problem and you get to the top of the building. You push the elevator and everyone else is sitting in the lobby scratching their head saying, how is that guy getting into the office with the top guy? And I know this firsthand because I was at Marcus and Millichap. I was the guy cold calling a lot of these owners of these apartment complexes. And I was the guy trying to get meetings based upon the old way of doing it. Hey, this sales comp, hey, this rent comp, hey, this opportunity, hey, this listing we have coming up, or all of those traditional ways. But then when I start to shift it to, hey, what if you can eliminate the need for the 1031 exchange? Hey, what if there was a way to diversify your wealth and get time back on your side? Hey, you have that debt coming due, right? But if you sold and you
Hmm.
pay your tax and after your debt, you have no more proceeds. What if there was a way to defer your tax, pay off your debt, and not have to do the 1031? And you start having these bigger conversations. I got those meetings. I got to sit down with those people. I would win listings that other brokers could not win because they didn't solve the problem. And so I want you to think about this from your perspective. If you're trying to unlock and bring capital into your syndication or into your fund, nothing touches this, right? Nothing touches this. We have tens of millions of dollars with top real estate fund managers across the country, and it's here. It's been around for 28 years, thousands of transactions. It's just, you need to get educated. And so we have the book, we have the podcast, we have all the things to help you with that. We have workshops, we speak at live events, and this is why I'm here on this podcast to kind of share the good news of the Deferred Sales Trust.
Awesome. I really appreciate your time. I think this is a perfect time, moment to transition into the final segment, which is the countdown to impact. And this is a 3, 2, 1, 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person that have all made an impact in your life.
I absolutely love it. I'll start with number 1 book in my life is the Bible, and it has been for really my whole life. But I got really serious about reading and connecting with the Lord every day, probably about 15 years ago, when I got in a men's Bible study and a discipleship group with accountability, and changed my life. The Lord was so good to me at that pivotal time in my time. It was when I was at Cheesecake Factory. It was when I was flat on my back financially, and it was when all of the challenges were going on. I doubled down on my faith and my intentionality to be with the Lord, and the Lord blessed me with that group. So the Bible is number 1, best book by far for me. Number 2, the one recently that I would say has been super impactful is the art. Never Split the Difference, Chris Voss, but more so than that, the masterclass called The Art of Negotiation. Because I read the book, Aaron, to be honest, and I listened to the book, and it was great. It's just hard. It was just hard to grasp how to do it or how to implement it. And then it wasn't until I downloaded the masterclass app and I clicked on Chris Voss's masterclass on the entire book and all this stuff that it just boom, it came to life. And so I've watched it probably 75 times. And I feel like I could, give a partial masterclass on it now, because it's so powerful and it's so crucial. So I would encourage everybody to stop everything you're doing, get the masterclass app. And they have like Coach K and Richard Branson and all these amazing leaders that teach you all kinds of other cool stuff. But the art of negotiation on there is worth, I feel like $100,000 by itself, So boom, I would check that one out. The Art of Negotiation, the masterclass. Okay. Number 3, I would say right now in my life is the Buy Back Your Time, Dan Martell. Right. And so I got a chance to meet Dan last week. I'm in his fitness program, which has been incredible. And I'll be hiring him as my coach into his coaching program. So that book right there, and just the mindset, again, back to time, we've been talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And mastering how to buy back your time through delegation and systems, and all of those things are so important, because momentum is sustained by systems, right? It's ignited by vision, right? And it's kind of fueled by faith, but it's sustained by systems. Okay. And so mastering that is so important. So that'd be the 3 books. I think so. That was the first one. What was the second question you had?
2 quotes.
Okay. 2 quotes. All right. I'll use the first one. Success is never owned. It's only rented, and the rent is due every day, by Rory Vaden. Right. And you can use really any word for that. Integrity is never owned. It's only rented. Rent is due every day. Your intimacy and your connection with your spouse is never owned. It's only rented, and the rent is due every day. Your back, for the kids, right? Intimacy and connection with your kids is never owned. It's only rented, and the rent is due every day. Like just understanding, again, back to time, even though you may have accomplished something in the past, it doesn't entitle you for impact today. And so we've got to always be grateful for the time that we have to make an impact today. And it goes to the concept of stewardship over ownership. In fact, I have a podcast called Build It to Billions, so you can give it all away. And the main theme is stewardship over ownership. In an ownership mindset, what happens, Aaron, is we tend to move towards entitlement. Like, I've worked hard, I've been disciplined, I've been a good spouse or a good parent, or, I've coached or I've given back, or I've done all these really cool, amazing things, right? Really great things. And if you feel like, that is something that you own, or like that you've done out of, just the goodness of your heart, right? And not out of the gifts and the talents and the treasures that the Lord has given you, right? We tend to move towards ownership, which taken too far moves into entitlement. Okay. And I'm really speaking to myself here. This is what I found in my past. But when you switch the mindset to stewardship over ownership, meaning every single day and every gift in every way has been given by the Lord to us to be a blessing and help to others, right? And to bring him glory and make an impact on the world. Then it's like it moves you towards gratitude. It moves you towards, more impact, more giving, right? And it frees you from from the entitlement trap, right? And so again, success is never owned; it's only rented. The rent is due every day. It'd be the number one quote, and then the second one, I'll throw another one in here. Is learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. If you work hard on your job, you'll make a living. If you work harder on yourself, you'll make a fortune. And the idea is not just about becoming a billionaire, right, or a millionaire. The idea is to be able to multiply your character, multiply your leadership, multiply your giving, multiply making impact for other people's lives. So it's the major areas of life: the faith, family, fun, fulfillment, fitness. Those main ones, friends. Like learn to work harder on yourself internally, right? Do the internal hard work so that those other things will come along, right? And so a lot of us, I think the mindset of traditional American culture is work really hard getting that that SAT score and those straight A's and get into college and get that degree and get that first job and close that sale. It's all external. Get that scholarship for sports. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but if that is your sole focus and you're not focusing on working harder on your internal parts of you, then you're missing it, right? You're missing it. And so that would be the two quotes for you.
That's fantastic. And the pro tip on the masterclass, I'm going to have to remember that one.
Yes.
Last one is one person who's made an impact in your life.
Whew. So there's so much. There's definitely more than one. I would say the one that I want to honor today is my mom. My mom had unconditional belief and love, and also consistency in praying for me and my brother. Right, and there's power in prayer, and she has been a consistent prayer warrior for my entire life. My parents were divorced at a young age. She went through a lot, but she never gave up on her faith in the Lord and her belief that the Lord has given myself and my brother, gifts and talents to be a blessing to this world. And she loved us unconditionally. She spoke life into us, belief. She prayed, right? So it's not just speaking life and belief, it's praying. She would pray, and she continues to pray. So my mom has been a hero for me my whole life. And I love my mom. And so, Mom, if you're ever hearing this in the future, thank you. I love you. And that would be my hero, or the one person I want to honor today.
I'm going to have to go with the judges. Yes, all of those answers are acceptable. You pass this round, and we may move on to the next stage. In fact, I'm going to have to steal those quotes. I love that, both of them. Yeah, fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing your time and your expertise, Brett. If anybody wants to learn more about Deferred Sales Trust, they want to find you, connect with you, where can they go?
Okay, so one thing is get the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. This is the book you can get on Amazon. Again, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. It's the proven playbook for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when selling assets of any kind for yourself or for your clients. We have people like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank in the book, people like Don Winter from DLP, Joe Fairlish, Ashcroft Capital, Brian Burke, amazing people in the book, not just me talking about some cool stuff with tax. It's actually leadership, it's grit, it's business, and then we weave in the Deferred Sales Trust as a way to unlock a lot of these things. So check that out. CapitalGainsTaxSolutions.com if you have a live deal of $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, or if you just want to check us out and start to learn about, get our free ebook there about ways to plan, to be thinking about this. And the last one would be BrettSwarts.com, and that gives you access to all of my social media, my YouTube channels, the book, both podcasts, and also the best 1031 exit plan. Which again, if you're going to be in a 1031 exchange, we offer a regular 1031 and the backup plan, which we really didn't touch on in this episode. But make sure that if you're even considering a regular 1031, great. You should use us because we'll give you that backup plan to give you flexibility and leverage to negotiate a great deal. And if it doesn't work on the 1031, we can save it into the Deferred Sales Trust. And so those would be the places to go. BrettSwarts.com, CapitalGainsTaxSolutions.com.
Terrific. Now, Brett, Thank you once more. I really appreciate your time, and uh, have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Aaron. God bless you. Appreciate it.